out into this world, tiny little thing before its time, in a God for what? A girl? Yes, tiny little girl, into this, out into this, before her time, God-forsaken hole, called, no matter, parents unknown, unheard of, he having vanished, thin air, no sooner buttoned up his breeches, she similarly, 8 months later, almost to the tick, so no love, spared that, no love such as normally vented on the speechless infant in the home, no, nor indeed for that matter, any of the kind, no love of any kind, at any subsequent stage, so typical affair, nothing of any note till coming up to 60 when, what, 70? God, coming up to 70, wandering in a field, looking aimlessly for cowslips, to make a ball, a few steps and stop, stare in his face, then on a few more, stop and stare again, so on, drifting out, when suddenly, gradually, all went out, all that early April morning light, and she found herself in the... What? Who? No! She! Found herself in the dark, and if not exactly insentient, for she could still hear the buzzing, so-called, in the ears, and a ray of light came and went, such as the moon might cast, drifting in and out of cloud, but so dulled, feeling so dulled she did not know what position she was in. Imagine what position she was in, whether standing or sitting, but the brain, what? Kneeling? Yes, whether standing or sitting or kneeling, but the brain, what? Lying? Yes, whether standing or sitting, or kneeling, or lying, but the brain, still in way, for her first thought was, oh, long after, sudden flash, brought up as she had been to believe, with the other waifs, in a merciful, God, first thought was, oh, long after, sudden flash, she was being punished for her sins, a number of which then, further proof if proof were needed, flashed over her mind, one after another, then dismissed as foolish, oh, long after, this thought dismissed, as she gradually realized, she was not suffering, imagine, not suffering, indeed, could not remember offhand when she had suffered less, unless of course she was meant to be suffering, thought to be suffering, just as the old time in her life, when clearly intended to be having pleasure. She was in fact having none, not the slightest, in which case, of course, that notion of punishment for some sin or another, or for the lot, or for no particular reason, for its own sake, a thing she understood perfectly, that notion of punishment, which had first occurred to her, brought up as she had been to believe, with the other waifs, in a merciful, God, first occurred to her, then dismissed as foolish, was perhaps not so foolish after all, so on, all that, vain reasonings, till another thought, oh, long after, sudden flash, very foolish really, but, what? Oh, the buzzing? Yes, all the time the buzzing, so-called, in the ears, though of course actually, not in the ears at all, in the skull, door roar in the skull, and all this time, this ray or beam, like a moonbeam, but probably not, certainly not, always the same spot, now bright, now shrouded, but always the same spot, as no moon could, no moon, just as all part of the same wish to torment, though also, in point of fact, not in the least, not a twinge, no far. So far, this other thought then, oh, long after, sudden flash, very foolish really, but so like her, in a way, that she might do well to groan, on and off, writhe she could not, as if in actual agony, but could not bring herself, some flaw in her make-up, incapable of deceit, or the machine, more likely the machine, so disconnected, never got the message, or powerless to respond, like numbed, couldn't make the sound, not any sound, no sound of any kind, no screaming for help, for example, should she feel so inclined, scream, ah! Then listen. Scream again. Ah! And listen again. No, spared that. All silent as the grave. No part. What? The buzzing? Yes, all silent but the buzzing. So-called. No part of her moving. That she could feel. Just the eyelids, presumably. On and off, shut off the light, reflex they call it, no feeling of any kind, but the lids, even best of times, who feels them, opening, shutting, all that moisture, but the brain still sufficiently, oh, very much so at this stage, in control, under control, to question even this, for on that April morning, so it reasoned, that April morning, she fixing with her eye, a distant bell, as she hastened toward it, fixing it with her eye, lest it elude her, had not all gone out, of all that light of itself, without any on her part, so on, it reasoned, vain questionings, and all dead still, sweet silent as a grave, when suddenly, gradually, she realized, what? The buzzing? Yes, all dead still but for the buzzing, when suddenly she realized words were, what? Who? No! She! Realized. Words were coming. Imagine! Words were coming. A voice she did not recognize at first so long as it had sounded, then finally had to admit, could be none other than her own. Certain vowel sounds she had never heard elsewhere, so that people would stare, the rare occasions once or twice a year. Always winter some strange reason, stare at her uncomprehending, and now this stream, steady stream she had once never, on the contrary, practically speechless. All her days how she survived, even shopping, out shopping, busy shopping centre, supermart, just hand in the list with the bag, old black shopping bag, then stand there waiting, and spinning like the time, middle of the throng, motionless, staring into space, mouth half open as usual, till it was back in her hand, the black bag in her hand, then pay and go, not as much as goodbye. How she survived! Another stream! Was catching on to it. Not the quarter. No idea what she was saying. Imagine. No idea what she was saying. Till she began trying to delude herself. It was not hers at all. Not her voice at all. And no doubt would have. Vital she should. Was on the point after long efforts when suddenly she felt, gradually she felt, her lips moving. Imagine. Her lips moving. As if of course till then it had not. And not alone the lips. The cheeks. The jaws. The whole face. All those what? The tongue? Yes, the tongue and mouth. And all those contortions about which no speech possible, and yet in the ordinary way, not felt at all. So intent one is on what one is saying, the whole being hanging on its words, so that not only had she to give up what one is saying, the whole being hanging on its words, so that not only had she admit hers alone, her voice alone, but this other awful thought, oh, long after, sudden flash, even more awful if possible, that feeling was coming back. Imagine, feeling coming back, starting at the top, then working down the whole machine, but no. Spared that, the mouth alone, so far, so far, then thinking, oh, long after, sudden flash, it can't go on, all that steady stream, straining to hear, make something of it, and her own thoughts, make something of them, all, what? The buzzing? Yes, all the time the buzzing, so-called, all that together. Imagine, whole body like gone, just the mouth, lips, cheeks, jaws, never, what? Tongue? Yes, lips, cheeks, jaws, tongue, never still a second, mouth on fire, stream of words, in her ear, practically in her ear, not catching the half, not the quarter, no idea what she's saying. Imagine, no idea what she's saying, and can't stop, no stopping it. She who but a moment before, but a moment, could not make a sound, no sound of any kind, now can't stop. Imagine, can't stop the stream, and the whole train begging, something begging in the brain, begging the mouth to stop, pause a moment, if only for a moment, and no response, as if it hadn't heard, or couldn't pause a second, mouth to stop, like maddened, all that together, straining to hear, please it together, and the brain raving away on its own, trying to make sense, to make it stop,